Okay, here we're going to be applying the black base coat or primer on the destroyed ATST, and you see that I get on Amazon and I buy these by the bulk, these nice little applicator bottles. They're really cheap. You can get a pack of 10 for like $10 or $15. Helps you control things as you put paints into your airbrush, so there's no spilling. And here's what we're using. We're using Stynel Res in black. Obviously, this is the white primer. Highly recommend it. It's self-leveling. Here I'm going to do a test and get things going here. Now this paint booth, the Zinni paint booth is amazing. You have to get one if you're getting into this, so you don't have to wear a mask or anything. It lights up. Honestly, I don't vent it outside. It's not necessary with this filter media that they have. That filter media I get an entire year before I have to change it, and the filter media is really cheap. I'm having a little bit of issue here with the spray coming out of the brush, and I just cleaned the brush the day before. It's totally clean. This is an indication that the whatever product you have in your airbrush is not thin enough. So since the last time I've airbrushed this black primer, it has thickened up a little bit, and I may not have mixed it up enough, even though I have a lead sinker, fishing sinker inside the bottle. I just upped the pressure, so I just got more pressure on the brush, and that's clearing it up. It's starting to clear up. And for those of you wanting to get into airbrushing, you definitely look to the right. My air compressor has a tank. That's very important. That way your air compressor is not running a lot. You're running off the air in the tank most of the time. It's coming out smoother now, but you'll notice when I go to refill the bowl here on the airbrush, I'll take some distilled water. I keep one of those squeezy bottles full of distilled water, and that's what I'll use for all my airbrushing paints, whether it be just the regular Vallejo paints. You see it's coming out really good now, see. So the initial amount of paint I put in there towards the bottom of the pot was a little thicker, which means I probably did not have it mixed thoroughly. But these are the main thing I can teach you guys about airbrushing is you've got to have a thin mix. So you can just see, checking the level, how much is left. You see I had a little bubble on the top of the pot. So yesterday when I cleaned it, I had a soapy solution I was using, so apparently I didn't rinse it too thoroughly. That's okay, it'll still work. It's just a surfactant. I just can't say enough for all of us modelers, any type of modeling work you do, how invaluable airbrush is, and it pays for itself in the shaker cans. Then you don't have to deal with the aerosols. You don't have to go outside or in your garage, deal with the changing temperatures. This is a totally controlled environment. There's a huge filter with a nice fan on the back of this unit that's sucking all those particles into that filter. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. See, I'll take the top off of my primer, and I'm going to add some distilled water. It's hard to read there. It says H2O, and underneath it says distilled. And the distilled water is not going to have any minerals in it, guys. You can buy it by the jug for like $2. There you go. I probably put a little bit too much in. It might make it a little too thin, but it's still good. Even with a nice sealed bottle like that, over time the paints will and the products will start to settle out. And even with the shaker inside, which is aka a sinker like you'd use on your fishing line, I buy those by the bulk on Amazon. I put them in all my paints. A little bit squirt out the top. Now we're going to fill the bowl back up about half full. I want to do about 2 coats of this primer because I'd like to put 2 thin coats on. Got plenty of paper towels on hand. You notice the toothpicks and the Q-tips I have right next to me. I'm using those to get that tip. Now another trick, and I already have some in this paint I mixed in already, and I'll show you here in a minute, is the product that will slow down the drying time of your primers and paints, and you won't get the clumping on the tip of the airbrush. So just going back over, hitting any of the areas where I still see gray from the initial color of the model. And that's why I wear my gloves, because you'll end up getting that all over your hands and then it doesn't want to come off. And you can get these, I get these at Costco, they're super cheap. My wife uses them for when she's cooking, handling meats. I keep some out in my workshop for when I'm painting out there. But just nice and smooth. Now again, this is a self-leveling primer. That means that if you do get it on a little heavy in certain areas, you can go back. When you push that button down, just air comes out. The paint doesn't come out till you pull that trigger back. So a lot of times I'll just blow air on. Now what I'll do is I'll take this toothpick and I'll just make sure nothing's globbing up on the tip. It hasn't globbed up, but I'll do this periodically on a bigger model like this just to make sure it's not globbing up. And something that will help with that is this airbrush flow improver. It just takes a few drops in with your paint, and what that does, guys, is it slows down the drying time so you don't get clumping on the end of your airbrush on the tip. It really helps with that. So you can get a bigger model. I can do a whole series of models. What I'll tend to do, especially with my finished top coats, is I'll stage a bunch of models that need it. I won't just do one or two. I'll do 5, 6, 7, 8 at a time, all in one batch. Now that right here, I'm just blowing straight air onto the model. So that's going to help with your dry time. See, my paint's getting low in the pot, so I'm just trying to squirt out the last little bit. That's why you see me pulsing the trigger. I'm just trying to get the last little bit of paint out before I have to run my airbrush cleaner through it. And here's the secret on the airbrush cleaner, guys. It's just distilled water and a couple drops of soap detergent. So I bought a bottle of airbrush cleaner, you see right here. And then when it was empty, you can just start making your own, and I can just use the bottle, right? Just buy that gallon of distilled water and just regular dish soap. So here I go. I'm going to get any residue and things that gather on that cone tip out of that with that Q-tip. It won't bend your needle, your airbrush needle. You see, I'm checking the flow. It's coming out nice. I'm going to get out. There's a little bit left. I want to try to use it all up, all that black, so it's not getting wasted. If I end up putting too much in, I'll just pour it back in. I'll take the lid off of the primer bottle and I'll just pour it back in. So yeah, I got a connection issue going on with that light on the left. I'm going to have to get some alcohol and clean that connector that goes to that light. It's probably just got some paint mist that's gotten up into that little crack where the connection is made that goes to that light. But I've had this spray booth now going on 3 years, and I love it. Great investment. It's not expensive. I think they're like $80. You might be able to get them on sale for $60. And you do not want that particulate getting into your lungs. It's basically microscopic pieces of plastic is basically what acrylic paint is. So you see I'm spraying it into my my pot, my airbrush pot. It holds my airbrush, and you can just spray into it. And you see I'll spray to see how it's coming out. It's cleaning, it's getting it nice and gets that tip nice and clean again. I'm going to go back in with my Q-tip on the other side, the clean side. I'm going to swab the tip again. I have found that this, if I can get 10 to 15 uses out of my airbrush before it needs a thorough clean when I do this procedure. I just keep the tip clean, the cone tip clean, and I use the Q-tip to get any residue off the tip of the needle. Now what I'll do is, as I clean the cap off here a little bit, I will put more airbrush cleaner in the pot and I'll start swabbing it out, and that makes sure that inside of that pot is nice and clean, no paint residue. Right, and you got to do this before, you cannot allow that paint to dry inside your pot. I'm planning on doing another project later today with this airbrush, and you'll see I'll leave just a tiny bit of airbrush cleaner in the pot so that it keeps everything nice and soft, so to speak, so that later on this afternoon from this video, I was going to do a top coat on a group of models I have staged. I'm checking the spray, make sure it's coming out good. I'm running probably 30 psi on this. I range anywhere from 20 to 30 psi depending on the thinness of the product, and I'm really starting to get good at getting the thickness with basically cutting it down with distilled water down to a science. You basically want it the consistency of like skim milk, right? If you get any thicker than that, the paint it's just not going to come out of that brush. It'll just clog and it just won't come out. And so distilled water is your friend. So it's nice and clean. I'm satisfied with how it's cleaned out. Put everything away, ready for the next time. I'm going to show you here how nice and smooth the finish of this is. Still a few little wet spots here and there in the deep recesses, but otherwise you can see how smooth it is, so it does not hide the details of the model. That's one of the biggest advantages of using an airbrush, guys, is the quality of the application, and the cost is greatly reduced, therefore paying for the airbrush. See you guys, see you next time. Ciao.